Welcome back to another Switch to Linux Outdoor Edition, where we're trying to cover news type related items. This is one that actually was sent to me, and I was kind of on the fence whether I wanted to talk about it or not talk about it, and that's the change in some of the Manjaro team. Somebody that has a little bit more information on the inside sent information to me. I looked at all that, and then I looked at all the public statements, and overall, just kind of the footnotes. I really think that this is no big deal, but the Linux community does in many places seem to be a little over dramatic in places, and so I kind of want to explain what I think I see going on here from various perspectives. Now, I don't know the individual people involved. I've not worked with them, so keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that I'm not deeply involved in the development of nearly any project. What I do is I look at the actual the use case from a user perspective in Linux and how you can get work done with a Linux device without getting super involved in too many areas like this, except maybe the snap issue, because I also fundamentally disagree with the principles. But regardless, let's go ahead and talk about the perspectives, and I'm just going to use the community posts that are available online live in the community. So the first one is from the Manjaro forum, change of treasurer for Manjaro community funds. This is by Jonathon, who was the former treasurer, I believe. He says the Manjaro community donations are currently held by Open Collective and Community Bridge, with me acting as treasurer since a switch away from Phil's personal bank account as the target for donations, and that in turn due to the company announcement. There's a written policy, which the policy explains that the funds will be covered for costs which support the progress of the Manjaro project, for example, and non-exhaustively travel and substantive cost for conferences and related activities, hardware purchases and upgrades to support the development of Manjaro, software purchases, upgrade licenses which support the development of Manjaro, hosting, SaaS and PaaS, etc. charges related to the project. Expenses should be discussed on the forum and or Telegram and nominally approved and normally prior to purchases being made before being submitted to the collective. So that's the policy. He goes on to say, he says the policy is intended to ensure the funds are used appropriately to benefit the community, for example, server hosting, development, software, etc. Written policy is to discuss expenses prior to purchase, so to ensure the best deal can be found. Smaller expenses have been submitted, which followed the policy. Recent expenses have been filed against the community funds after approval only from Phil, with the expectation that I would waive them through. The policy was reiterated and agreed on by team members. Another expense was submitted today for a $2,000 laptop, and with a discussion only between Phil and the person wanting the laptop. That's 2,000 pounds, I think I said dollars. This was rejected as the policy had not been followed, and I queried the expense. Other privately discussed expenses also came to light. Phil was unhappy about the rejection and the additional questions about how community funds would be used. As a consequence, I am no longer the treasurer, leaving Phil in control of all funds once again. Phil is now in a position to use community funds as he sees fit in order to move the community project in the same direction as his company. So that's what he says, and reading through the comments, there's obviously a little bit of concern. Some people are talking about the fact that there wasn't a post about it for a while, but there actually is a post from the from the Manjaro team, and is this the right one? Okay, yes, this is the right one here. And so, fellow Manjaro users, this is from hold on, I don't think that's what I was looking for. I want to read the one from Phil. That one was one, but it was not actually the one written by Phil. This is the one written by Phil. Fellow Manjaro users, as you may have heard, our longtime contributor and friend Jonathon is no longer part of the Manjaro team. He has been a great asset to the team, and over the 7 years, he has done much for packaging communication with the Arch team, and especially for the community. He will be missed. The inciting incident for conflict eventually leading to this was the hardware purchase for one of the team members, but the disagreement was not caused because the purpose was inappropriate. Everyone involved was mostly on the same page about how the money should be spent. The actual disagreements were about the process of allocating funds. Philip was concerned that the way, I'm sorry, this was not written by Phil. I thought it was, but I thought I read one by him. Anyway, Philip was concerned that the way funds requests were being processed would discourage team members from adequately expressing their funding needs. Jonathon was concerned that Phil's overlapping roles within the company and the community would create potential for conflict of interest. The disagreement culminated in Jonathon announcing that he was stepping down from the administration of donations. The initiative for this came from him, but the way it was enacted left him feeling kicked out, which led to him to publicly announce his story while the events were still unfolding. The initial announcement originally contained some subjective language, which he has since redacted to match events more objectionably. He advocated for sharper distinction between company and the community. Jonathon's departure was due to personal conflicts within the team and his diverging vision of how the Manjaro community's relationship with the Manjaro company should be organized. Because of his methods of highlighting his views, his position within the team became untenable. We want to be clear, there's not been any financial misuse of the donated funds. We are committed to ensuring that it will remain so. We are in the process of addressing the concerns that were raised and putting in a new process in place for the approval of funding requests. And we wish Jonathon the best in his future endeavors. So those are the two basic community posts that are on the Manjaro team, one from Jonathon and one from the rest of the team as it stands right now. So there's always, whenever disagreements arise when you have business, it raises some questions about who do you keep working with, who do you not. This is why I tend to mostly work alone. I might do a little bit better if I pulled in extra people from time to time, but at the same time, the conflicts can destroy projects because there's always going to be misunderstandings. Undoubtedly, there's going to be people who leave the Manjaro project because of this. One way or the other. There's going to be people who hold fast that they did absolutely nothing wrong and will criticize anybody who has chosen to leave. And so when we have this type of approach, when we have this type of thing going on where there is a disagreement like this and it becomes public, what I start looking for is who is using calmer languages and who's using more emotional languages. And in some of the background story I saw a whole lot of emotional arguments, things going back to criticizing people from the very beginning of the project, not just what we're looking at here. But there's also is a conflict, and I see and understand what we're talking about, where there's a conflict when you have a foundation that's community-driven attached to a company that is probably profit-driven. The biggest example of this comes to mind is Mozilla. There is a Mozilla community that can accept donations and has some degree of community element, but there's also a Mozilla, a private company that is, I'm not sure if they're a for-profit company, but they're definitely a company that people derive incomes from. And in that case, we have to look at what is the best case for all scenarios. So I'm looking at all of the things I'm looking at. I'm saying maybe I might have some questions about how funds are being used, but at the same token, Manjaro does seem to be listening to their community. Sure, they do harebrained things like trying to pull out LibreOffice for another office suite that's like a freemium or a shareware type approach, but they listened to their community, changed directions, and gave you the choice which software you wanted to do. That's the type of thing I like to see. We are in such a divided world right now where the slightest disagreement of opinion can cause us to all go crazy, lose our minds, and just declare the opposite opinion holders to be absolutely evil, absolutely stupid, and absolutely incomprehensible. And until we get rid of this, our society is going to continue to crumble. Okay, the fact is, yeah, they did something kind of foolish. The community spoke up. They changed their direction. What's the problem? You can say the same thing for Linux Mint. A vast majority of people on the Linux Mint project who are dedicated to the Linux Mint team are not interested in snaps. The Linux Mint team listened and put something in place. But then they also gave something for the people who wanted to use snaps. They're listening to their community. I see builds like Farron OS, who, when he first has build up, if you guys don't remember when that thing first came out, it was so bright, it was like staring into the center of the sun. And he listened to the feedback of the community and the people who were reviewing it and things, and he he made tweaks and adjustments and changes to make it an easier distro to look at. That's the type of thing we start to see. Now, on the opposite end, when we start to see things like some of the things Ubuntu is trying to do, where they're not listening to their community at all. They're just like, let's weather the storm and eventually people will stop complaining. And the reality is that tends to happen. So when we look at all of these types of things and all these approaches, and I see these types of position changes going on inside of a community like Manjaro, I want to look at it, and I do kind of want to understand, because if there is some legitimate issues where things are being, money is being mismanaged, that will lead to some problems down the road. Now, does that mean the operating system itself is necessarily bad? No, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. So I will encourage you, if you like Manjaro and it's working for you, keep on using it. Now, I do also want to mention here that there was about a month or so when some critical updates did not get pushed out to Manjaro. That actually irritated a lot of people. If there is a big issue that Manjaro needs to communicate on, it's not the changing of their position of treasurer as much as it is the why did it take so long for an Arch system to get a critical update in place. I actually have followers of the channel who switched from Manjaro because of that. And undoubtedly there's going to be some people who switch who are concerned about the financial and the money directions as well. But just to let you guys know, that's out there. Before you make a decision, I'd encourage you to read both posts, read the more company-focused post on the news site on Manjaro, head on over to the Manjaro forums and read Jonathon's side of the post before you make your decision. And if there's other people in the know that know a little bit more about this, hey, listen to what they have to say as well. But that's what I have to say. I don't see this as a huge deal. Anytime we have businesses getting involved in things, there's invariably decisions that have to be made, and there's no way possible to make a decision that's going to be beneficial and absolutely joyed and embraced by everybody. I mean, I know that on my own channel. There's some people that want me to drop everything except pure Linux, and there's other people that hang out for the weekly news roundup, which is just generally not Linux content related. And so walking the fine line of not irritating people too much, like I don't want to get into politics occasionally, I have to, but at the same token, we have to look at all this kind of stuff and be like, you're not going to please everybody, so you do the best that you can do. And that's honestly why I like to work alone more often than I like to work with people. I might do better if I bring on team members to help with some things. And I do actually listen to my supporters quite a bit. The new end screen was because a supporter requested. I said, hey, we could do this or we could do this. He says, no, please prioritize a new screen supporter. I said, all right, I'll prioritize it. And I'll do that. I will absolutely listen to my supporters. Now, if you just come on but leave a comment every now and again and you tell me how I should do something, I'm not as inclined to listen to you. So just is that. But I do actually weigh the questions and the advice that supporters do give. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it's got to be my decision because I'm the one who has to live with what I'm doing, and that's what they're doing at the Manjaro team. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM. or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.